exactly where all of your body parts are, so specifically that you can know exactly where those sensations are coming from, especially when you kind of manipulate it and prime people this way. So, and it makes sense too that if you're feeling something, you can actually see where the stimulus is coming from. That you wouldn't necessarily point at the exact spot that it occurred, because part of how we know the way that our body is interacting with our environment, where stimulus is coming from, isn't just through tactile sensation. Our eyes play a role in determining that as well. I forget what the word is. It's something like karyoperception or something like that. Proprioception, that's the one. So multiple senses are interacting to give that impression. And then the last one I came across that I found particularly interesting is called body swap. And this is the illusion. They've basically gotten you to sensory input through an entirely different body other than your own, sort of convincing you that you're in another person's body. And I'll show you the way that experiment was set up. They create this camera system so that you're looking through the camera and you see what the mannequin sees. And they prime this, they do a synchronous stimulation. They rub your belly and the mannequin's belly at the same time, and you're seeing the mannequin's belly being rubbed. Later on in the experiment, I didn't have a picture of this, they actually took a knife and they stabbed the mannequin while the camera was on. And they measured the stress level of the participant in various ways, like galvanic stimulus response, and it skyrockets. Because you recondition the mind to perceive these stimulus in a different way. The fact that you perceive them at all is interesting, because they get to the point where they don't require synchronous stimulation. You kind of feel it even when they're not doing it to you. It's just over here. But only if they do the synchronous first. And that just goes to show that it's not just the stimulation. Your mind plays a role in determining what you feel or don't feel. It plays a role.
What about experience? Like, if you do this experiment a couple of times, do you eventually learn from, okay, I know they weren't touching me there even though it felt like it? Does that play a part, do you know?
I actually don't know. I'm not sure about that. It gets to the point where even though you know personally that that's not your body, subconsciously you've been primed to believe that it is, so that your body still responds to those stimulus even if they aren't actually present on your body. And people do report actually feeling the sensations for a little while. It goes away eventually. I mean, obviously, if they keep stabbing the mannequin, you're going to stop feeling something eventually. But yeah, your mind actually responds. This is a phenomenon called body swapping. So yeah, that's sort of really all I had. Are there any questions?
I'm just kind of wondering, and maybe it doesn't have anything to do with it, do you think there's any connection to the placebo effect? I remember reading something recently that said that even when you know it's a placebo, it still has an effect on you. And I'm just kind of wondering if there might be something like that. We're primed to have a reaction from past experiences, and even though consciously you know this shouldn't be working.
Yeah, and there are various aspects of the experiment, and these experiments were actually done fairly complicated. The setup was fairly complicated. They put in a lot of controls and made a lot of effort to eliminate these possibilities, but I don't know that they eliminated them completely. Presumably, most of the participants didn't necessarily know what they were trying to accomplish in the experiment. But especially with the handle that I pointed out. But I'm not sure specifically what the relationship is. Obviously, from the aspect of placebo, it's something that we need to be concerned about.
I've delved into this a little bit, and I was wondering if you have heard or come across in your research that they're talking about mirror neurons with this, and they think that autistic people don't have a good development of those mirror neurons. I was wondering if you came across anything where they did like these experiments on an autistic person.
No, I did not, but in a lot of the research they do mention that, and the mirror neurons are implicated in a lot of these phenomena, with the way that we correlate what we see with what we actually feel and what we expect to feel. So I think they've established pretty conclusively that the mirror neurons play a major role in that. But as far as experimenting with defects in those neurons, I don't know the answer.
So is this the same phenomenon that happens like when somebody loses their arm but yet they can still feel it? Is it the same kinds of things happening in the brain?
Yes, it's similar.
Okay.
And there's actually another phenomenon that occurs where people feel sensations in limbs that they never even had. Ghost limbs, not just limbs that you
Really?
lost. So yeah, the ability for the mind to give the impression of stimulus in empty space that your body doesn't correlate with is quite powerful. So yeah, phantom limbs and then people feeling sensations outside their body is not an unheard of phenomenon.
This reminded me of an episode of House, where, I mean, long story short, there's a guy that he's trying to get on his good side. He's the landlord of their apartment. The guy doesn't have an arm, and it's always hurting down where the limb used to be. He ties him up, and he puts his arm in a box with a mirror. He has his other hand in there. Throws his other hand so it looks like he has his other hand. And when he does that, the pain goes away because he's able to move his hand.
Yeah.
It looks like he didn't move his hand, and it tricks his mind into getting pain go away. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it makes sense. Because the way you see yourself in your reality and the way you interact with it, those two things cooperate with each other. In order for you to interact meaningfully with your environment, it can't just be tactile. You have to see it as well. And so they work together to help you interact with your reality. Because you see and you reach to grab something, those are two sensations that are working together. So at the same time, when you experience something, what you see also can affect what you feel or what you expect to feel.
I think that's great because it really comes back to, when people have those anecdotal stories of why the woo works for them kind of thing. And they say, well, I felt it, or I experienced it, I saw it, I know what happened to me. And stuff like this just proves that's not necessarily great data.
Has there been any correlation between this kind of thing and out-of-body experiences?
Yes, actually, if I had time, I was going to put a slide before the body swapping thing about out-of-body experiences. And they'd actually replicated that feeling experimentally, where I don't know exactly what the experimental setup was, I didn't know too much into it, but they basically they make it so you see yourself from behind, from a camera perspective, and they do various things to the point until your consciousness, or where you perceive yourself to be versus where your sensory input is coming from, to be misplaced. That you can actually get that out of body experience where you're feeling things from over there, but your actual conscious self is behind you. So yeah, they have replicated that feeling. I don't know what it feels like, but it sounds kind of cool.
This is clearly something that should be done at a skeptic party.
Yeah.
Soon.
If I had a lot of time, that would be great to set up some of those experiments and demonstrate them. Yeah, out-of-body experiences have been demonstrated and they are possible. No, I think most of when you talk about out-of-body experiences, especially with reference to near-death experience, people always claim that they knew what the doctor was doing and things like that, which I think is a totally different issue. But yeah, the sensation of being out of your body, that's clearly something that can happen to people. There's no reason to think that it wouldn't, or that it doesn't. So that's an interesting phenomenon that we do know that occurs, but we also know that it's not necessarily supernatural. It's something we knew how to induce it because we had ideas about what was actually causing it. We're not tricking the soul out of the body or anything like that.
Well, we can't trick the soul.
And these are physical phenomena.
So, go back to the pain issues, stuff that Joel brought up and Brian brought up. Is this an instance where the mind can actually heal pain? Is that potentially a place where this is applicable?
Sure. I mean, pain, the way we perceive pain, it's not totally subjective, but there are subjective elements to it, yeah. Somebody's attitude towards pain, previous experience, all kinds of things affect the way that we deal with pain. So yeah, I mean, That's just, I wouldn't say it's necessarily related. It's just another example of the way our attitude and our expectation can affect the way that we perceive reality or our place within that reality.
I thought I understood, and often in error, that phantom pain, for example, is where a limb has been amputated or otherwise. The mind has modeled the body, or the brain has modeled the body in itself. And now that that limb presents no inputs, the neurons start to be taken over by adjacent models, and so those inputs are confusing to the old model and result in pain. Is that an accepted explanation for the phenomenon,
Yeah, I
or
believe
has it
so.
been superseded by something?
From what I read, and I didn't include it in the PowerPoint, so it was related, but I only had so much time and I'm not sure how long it would take. But as far as I read, that seems to be the consensus. But I didn't, I skimmed some of that stuff, so I couldn't answer that question exactly. But as far as the mirror neuron thing, that's more related to the body swapping kind of stuff. Anything else?